Imagine a small Anatolian state, a tiny spark in the late 13th century. This is where our story begins, in 1299, with a man named Osman I. He wasn't a king of a vast realm, but a tribal leader with a vision. From this small beginning, the Ottoman Empire was born. Osman and his successors, known as sultans, began a relentless expansion. They were driven by ambition, faith, and military prowess. A key moment in these early days was the capture of Bursa in 1326. This was not just another city. It became the first major capital of the burgeoning Ottoman state, a symbol of their growing power and a base for future conquests. The Ottomans were no longer just a nomadic tribe. They were an empire in the making, and their sights were set on the grandest prize of all. As the empire grew, it set its eyes on Europe. The Balkans fell under Ottoman control, piece by piece. But one city stood as a formidable barrier, a legendary bastion that had resisted countless sieges for over 1,000 years. Constantinople, the heart of the Byzantine Empire. For centuries, it was the dream of every Muslim ruler to conquer this city. In 1453, a young, brilliant, and utterly determined sultan stepped onto the world stage. He was only 21 years old, and his name was Mehmed II. Mehmed wasn't just a warrior. He was a master strategist and an innovator. He knew a conventional attack wouldn't work. So, he did the unthinkable. He commissioned the construction of massive cannons, monsters of bronze that could hurl enormous stone balls, something the world had never seen before. These were the super weapons of their time, designed for one purpose: to shatter the unbreakable walls of Constantinople. The siege began. For 53 days, the city endured a relentless bombardment. The defenders fought bravely, but they were outnumbered and outgunned. Mehmed's genius shone brightest in a truly audacious move. The Golden Horn, a crucial waterway, was blocked by a massive chain, preventing the Ottoman navy from attacking the city's weaker sea walls. So, Mehmed ordered his ships to be dragged overland, across a hill, and into the harbor. Imagine the sight: dozens of warships sailing across dry land, pulled by thousands of men and oxen. It was a logistical miracle and a psychological masterpiece that shattered the defenders' morale. On May 29, 1453, the final assault began. The Ottoman cannons breached the ancient walls, and the elite Janissary troops poured into the city. Constantinople had fallen. Mehmed rode into the city, not as a destroyer, but as a conqueror. He went to the Hagia Sophia, the grandest cathedral in Christendom, and ordered it converted into a mosque. This single event sent shockwaves across the world. It marked the definitive end of the 1,000-year-old Byzantine Empire and heralded the true arrival of the Ottomans. As a world power, Mehmed earned his title, the Conqueror, and Constantinople, renamed Istanbul, became the magnificent new capital of an empire that now stood at the crossroads of Europe and Asia. With Istanbul as its new heart, the Ottoman Empire entered its golden age. For the next 2 centuries, it was one of the most powerful and prosperous empires on earth. Under sultans like Selim I and his son, Suleiman the Magnificent, the empire reached its absolute zenith. Suleiman's reign, from 1520 to 1566, is often seen as the peak of Ottoman power, prestige, and cultural achievement. The empire's border stretched from the gates of Vienna in the north to the Persian Gulf and the Red Sea in the east and south, and across North Africa. It was a colossal, multi-ethnic, multi-religious state. The Ottoman Navy, commanded by legendary admirals like Barbarossa Hayreddin Pasha, dominated the Mediterranean Sea. Ottoman armies seemed invincible, pushing deeper and deeper into Europe. Cities like Belgrade and Budapest fell, and the name of the Sultan struck fear and awe into the hearts of European monarchs. This wasn't just a military superpower. Istanbul became a dazzling center of art, science, and culture. The architect Mimar Sinan, a contemporary of Michelangelo, designed hundreds of breathtaking mosques, bridges, and palaces that still define the city's skyline today. Poetry, calligraphy, and philosophy flourished. The empire's legal system, codified by Suleiman, was a model of administrative efficiency. The Topkapi Palace, the sprawling residence of the sultans, was a city within a city, home to thousands and the nerve center of a global empire. For a time, it seemed the Ottoman sun would never set. But even the mightiest empires carry the seeds of their own decline. The very size of the empire made it difficult to govern. The constant warfare, while bringing territory, also drained the treasury, and the world was changing. The first major crack in the facade of Ottoman invincibility appeared in 1683. After decades of relative peace on the European front, Sultan Mehmed IV, urged on by his ambitious Grand Vizier, Karamus Pasha, decided to launch one last great campaign to capture the ultimate prize. Vienna, the capital of the Habsburg Empire, it was to be the culmination of centuries of westward expansion. A massive Ottoman army, numbering over 100,000 soldiers, laid siege to the city. Vienna was on the brink of collapse. Its defenders were starving, exhausted, and vastly outnumbered. But as hope faded, a relief force arrived. A combined European army, led by the Polish king, Jan III Sobieski, descended from the Kollenberg Heights overlooking the city. The Battle of Vienna was a catastrophic defeat for the Ottomans. The siege was broken, and the once feared army was sent into a chaotic retreat, leaving behind its camp, its cannons, and its reputation for invincibility. This defeat marked a crucial turning point. It wasn't the end of the empire, not by a long shot, but it was the end of its expansion into Europe. The tide had turned. From this point forward, the Ottomans would be on the defensive, fighting to hold on to the vast territories they had already conquered. The era of decline had begun. The next 200 years were a long, slow, and painful retreat. The empire was beset by problems from all sides. Internally, a series of weak and ineffective sultans, political corruption, and the rising power of the Janissaries, who often staged coups, weakened the central government. Economically, the empire was falling behind a rapidly industrializing Europe. New sea routes to Asia discovered by European explorers bypassed the Ottoman trade monopolies, crippling a key source of revenue. Externally, the pressure was relentless. The rising Russian Empire to the north and the Habsburgs to the west chipped away at Ottoman territories in a series of costly wars. Nationalist movements, inspired by the French Revolution, began to stir among the empire's diverse ethnic groups in the Balkans. The Greeks, Serbs, Bulgarians, and Romanians all fought for and won their independence throughout the 19th century. The empire became known as the sick man of Europe, a vast state slowly bleeding territory and influence, kept alive mainly because the great European powers couldn't agree on how to divide it. There were attempts at reform, like the Tanzimat period, which aimed to modernize the army, the administration, and the economy, but they were often too little, too late. The empire was trapped between its glorious past and a modern world it couldn't fully adapt to. The final act of this 600-year-long epic began in the summer of 1914. World War I erupted, and the Ottoman Empire made a fateful decision. It joined the Central Powers, siding with Germany and Austria. This decision sealed its doom. The empire fought on multiple fronts: in the Caucasus against Russia, in Mesopotamia and Palestine against the British, and most famously at Gallipoli, where Ottoman forces successfully defended their homeland against a massive Allied invasion. But the war was a disaster. It drained the empire of its last resources and manpower. By 1918, the Ottoman armies were defeated. On October 30th, 1918, the empire signed the Armistice of Mudros with the Allies. The terms were harsh. Allied troops occupied Istanbul and key parts of the empire. The war was over, but the fight for the future of the Turkish people was just beginning. In the ashes of the defeat, a new leader emerged, a brilliant army officer who had made his name at Gallipoli, Mustafa Kemal. He refused to accept the partition of the Turkish heartland and organized a nationalist resistance. This sparked the Turkish War of Independence. After 3 years of brutal fighting, Mustafa Kemal's forces drove out the occupying powers and secured the sovereignty of a new nation. With the victory of the nationalists, the old imperial system was obsolete. On November 1st, 1922, the Grand National Assembly of Turkey officially abolished the office of the Sultan. The last Sultan, Mehmed VI, fled into exile. After 623 years, the Ottoman Empire, an empire that had once stretched across 3 continents and shaped the course of world history, had officially come to an end. From its ashes, the modern Republic of Turkey was born, with Mustafa Kemal, now known as Ataturk, or Father of the Turks, as its first president. The story of the Ottomans is a powerful reminder that all empires, no matter how mighty, eventually fall, leaving behind a legacy that continues to shape our world today. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this journey through history, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell for more stories from the past. See you next time.